Hi, and welcome to this Cyber House Party session on opening the doors to the cybersecurity industry. I'm Dr. Jessica Barker. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of the cybersecurity company Cygenta. I'm the author of the book Confident Cybersecurity, and I'm delighted to be chairing this panel discussion today. Like many people, it is a topic that I am personally very passionate about, really keen to make cybersecurity more diverse and more inclusive. So that's why I'm really excited to have an absolutely amazing panel with us today to discuss this issue and to get into how we can overcome some of the challenges. So let me introduce the esteemed panel. We have Erhan Tamerkan with us. He is Business Information Security Officer at Arqiva, a major UK infrastructure company, and he's also an ambassador for the UK Cybersecurity Challenge. We have Antonia Hayward with us. Antonia is Head of Client Solutions for Parity, who specialise in IT recruitment and have more than 45 years experience recruiting for the public sector. Beyond that, they pride themselves on being diverse and supporting their clients with how to be more diverse. We have Dan Prince with us. Dan is the course director for the multidisciplinary master's degree in cybersecurity at Lancaster University. He's also the deputy director for Lancaster University's Cybersecurity Research Centre, which is an NCSC academic centre of excellence in cybersecurity research. Joining us also is Mahbub al-Islam, who is not only the CISO for HM Courts and Tribunal Service, but also the director of the Security Institute. And last but not least, we have Danny Dresner, Professor of Cybersecurity at the University of Manchester and Research Director at the IASME Consortium. So it's a real pleasure to have such a great panel with us, and I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing what they have to say about how we can open the doors to the cybersecurity industry. So first off, I would like to consider briefly the challenges that we face. I think it's important that we get onto the solutions, but before that, let's lay the context and think about what challenges are we actually trying to overcome with this issue. And so I'd like to pose this to Antonia first. What challenges, and I think your perspective from recruitment will be really interesting to consider what challenges we face when we're trying to make recruitment into this industry more inclusive.
Thank you. Yes, I've spent a long time in IT recruitment and a long time speaking to middle-aged white men and noticed that this trend it was not only boring, but also a real big problem that needs fixing. I think we need to start looking at attributes instead of skills. We can teach skills, we can't teach attributes. So I think we need to widen the net when we are recruiting, instead of asking for a bunch of skills, which are always important, but asking for attributes and opening up to a wider audience.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring Dan in at this perspective. Obviously, Dan, you will be working with a lot of students. I'd be really interested in where you see some challenges when we're trying to think about making this industry more inclusive and more diverse.
So one of the things that we found at Lancaster in terms of trying to encourage a diverse range of students coming into our program is really the language that we use. I mean, one of the key things that is really important to get right is the way that we present the industry and the language that we use to portray it. Not just the language, but also the iconography, the photos, the images that we use. And, you know, people like to pursue areas that remind them of themselves. So if we're putting up specific images that don't reflect who they are, then they're not going to be interested. I mean, one of the things that there's been a lot of work in academia, actually looking at the impact of language in a wide variety of areas. And one of the things that I found as a really simple thing that you can do is just stop talking about security and defense and start talking about protection. And so one of the things I've tried to start to do is present the MSc and what the MSc will enable you to do as a protective measure. And that appeals to a much broader range of attitudes and a diversity of talent. So I think that's really important. The other thing is just thinking about these stereotypes, you know, the dark suits, the dark glasses, the locks. You know, I think if I see another hacker hoodie with you know, another kind of FBI kind of like agent and a padlock, I think I'm going to scream, because they all instill a certain type of reaction, and that's an exclusive reaction as well as an inclusive one. So I think we need to be careful about how we create a suitable environment using the language and imagery, and that's incumbent upon everybody, that's across the board, from advertising job roles through to the way that we present businesses.
And do you see role models as being important for your students, so having sort of more representative role models?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think, you know, again, it comes back to one of the things I said before. People will go into roles that remind them of themselves, you know. So if we've got really good role models, if we've got people that stand up and says, you know, I work in cybersecurity and I am like you, that's a really great advertisement. You know, because our program is multidisciplinary, we have actually quite good gender diversity, and we have quite good diversity full stop across the program, because you know, people look at it and go, actually, I didn't realize cybersecurity could be such a broad range of skills. So that's a really good way to encourage them.
And on this discussion, I'd really like to bring in Erhan and your perspective, particularly Erhan as an ambassador for the Cybersecurity Challenge. I know that you have spoken about the importance of mentoring, and I wonder what role you think mentorship can play when it comes to this challenge.
Sure. Yeah. So I think on the mentoring front, I think I'll talk from the angle of people seeking out a mentor. So I think, you know, from a mentor, you know, if you're going to go and look for a mentor, I think you really do need to be kind of open and transparent and willing to learn kind of new things. You have to be eager to learn. So I think one thing that some people can do is be very kind of tunnel visioned on, you know, this is the role that I want. But one thing, when I often speak to people through the Cybersecurity Challenge, and a lot of students, you know, a lot of them are not kind of, they're dead set on one specific role and don't actually know the kind of the many roles that actually exist in this industry. And I think, you know, go along, if you do seek out a mentor, you know, go with an open mind, be willing to try new approaches. I think there's a lot you can learn, because I always go with the saying, you know, success leaves clues, right? So if you can go along and find someone who has that role that you're aiming for, you know, I've been very lucky to be mentored by a CISO, you know, and, you know, just to be able to speak to them, and, you know, success leaves clues. So if you can go along and not make the same mistakes that they've made in the past, then I think there's a lot to learn. But two things I would say: you have to dedicate time to it and be willing to listen and take feedback.
What great saying, success leaves clues. I love it. I think that should be a hashtag. So that's a great quote already from this discussion. And I think it would be great to get Mahbubul's perspective on this, because Mahbubul, I know you've spoken about the importance of accessibility and of making roles more available to people. I wonder if you could comment on that.
So yes, we have spoken a number of times about lots of things. Making roles available to people and making people accessible to roles is two different things. And what we need to do is focus on making sure that the right roles are engineered towards the right type of people, and also making sure that we help people get there. And Erhan's talked about mentoring. So it's one of those things that we have to really focus a lot on, making sure colleagues within the security industry, including colleagues that were in the lecturing community as well, are able to help drive those kind of opportunities towards that, because it all starts at university or college or school and earlier. So you know, depending on where you want to go, you can go all the way backwards, and make sure that you put in active steps to allow for the roles to be visible at a very early age, and then and going forward, even if it's a second career. A lot of people have a second career in cybersecurity or information security or security in general. So it's making sure that we are able to provide that opportunity for people to understand the roles and be clear about what the role exists. Lots of people will talk about unicorn roles. You know, you have to do a bit of everything, but sometimes you have to start somewhere and work your way up through the process.
Absolutely. And do you think we could do more as individuals and as a community to coach people for roles and to help them be ready to take those opportunities?
So coaching and mentoring are two different things. I think, in my opinion, I'm still learning in that space, so I'm happy to be challenged in that. You know, when you're coaching somebody, you're not coaching somebody to do the job. you know, that's part of the mentoring side of things, that's part of the experience side of things. Coaching will be slightly different in terms of when somebody's preparing for interviews, where somebody's actually looking at roles, how they will tackle certain challenges and obstacles. Leadership, most of these leadership qualifications and opportunities out there have employment coaches or work coaches that will help you understand how to behave as a leader, or how to deliver as a leader, based on their lived experience in being a senior leader. So coaching within the same space of cybersecurity is very, very important. It allows people to understand how to get into cybersecurity, what sort of things they should be applying for, and how to tackle interview questions and stuff like that. And diversity of thought is very, very important in this space. So hence the reason understanding the coaching side of things will be very important.
Thanks. I think that's a really great point. And Danny, we've spoken a bit about the sort of university perspective on this, but I'd like to bring you in at this point to see what you think about how we could build people up more and what we could do to support people to make inroads in careers in this industry.
Well, I think one of the things which I think, and leading on from other colleagues here, is finding those, I suppose, near role models, the ones who are still on their journey. Because one of the things I think when we measure and we look at things, we're often looking at absolutes and final points, which of course gives us the challenge of matching that final point with where somebody is now. And we're in such a changing and developing dynamic landscape. It's great for them to look at opportunities, people developing opportunities to see which way they have gone and where they've come from, and where they've moved on. So some of the sort of the role models that I'm able to kind of hook my students up with are actually haven't long since moved on from the student fraternity themselves, and they've been fortunate to get involved in the extracurricular activities, meet some other people, start developing their network, not expecting to to walk out of a university and straight in a grouping. So they're starting to see what their sample pack is, and I've learned over the years to look for those sort of almost, I'd describe them almost as natural born leaders, but they don't realize they are at the time. So I'm thinking of, I've got an Iranian student, sorry, she's not a student, she graduated a few years ago, who took up the opportunities, and she's moved on, and now she's able to pass those messages on. A couple of African students from Tanzania, one who I think is headed, well, has headed back there, another staying in the UK, who are themselves got fresh ideas. They're great for asking questions. And something I learned many years ago, actually, from a student teacher of my daughter, is I look at their faces, and if they're looking at me with pursed lips and they're not smiling, I know I have to up my game and find out what it is that it actually helps. And I think it's important to also realize that we can't throw too many things at them. We can't throw just in the same way we can't throw somebody who's made all the moves, gone through all of their career, and give them the feeling that maybe they need to kind of mirror that. I think all of these issues, you need to look at the individuals, look at the backgrounds, find them things that they can measure. I tend to call it the sort of the well, in lots of things, a bow tie analogy, not the usual bow tie models that people talk about, because we've got quite a wide problem. We've got a great load of individuals, backgrounds, cultures, diversity. The last thing actually I want is, I hate people from my background, because I'm not going to learn anything fresh. So but it's too much often to deal with so many at once. So you can concentrate. And I think this is actually a fault with the world today. People say, oh well, this campaign is too narrow. No, it isn't. It's great, because if you narrow it, you start with a wide problem, you narrow it down to the knot, and you learn the lessons of how to bring those people in. Then you can expand it again, the other side of the bow tie, to actually to bring in others, and you actually grow diversity at the time. Everybody's got their superpowers. You've got to be able to find out what it is. What they may be great at, really formal things. That they maybe have a go hackers. Terrific. Put those two together, you've got a team.
And Antonia, do you think we can do more as a community to make better inroads in terms of inclusion and diversity and to open that door more widely?
Yeah, I think Daniel actually hinted at the idea there that we need to look at ourselves as a community again. So we've all been very insular. I think COVID-19's brought us a little bit closer together as a community. But perhaps if we had the responsibility as a member of the community to help and support and guide others in the community, it would naturally grow. And in terms of education, we in this country think once university's done, that's it, my education's ended. I think, again, if we was to encourage the community that we live in, that's an evolving and a continuous process. And we have technology nowadays that's meant to make us work smarter. We seem to be working longer and smarter. And maybe the smart thing to do is for us to all do 4-day weeks, and one day we go into our community and we coach and we mentor and we do some toolbox sessions. And again, you've all sort of hinted on the fact to be inclusive and diverse. I do think we need to be looking at attributes, and it's matching someone's attributes. If they're naturally inquisitive, or they're naturally good problem solvers, or they're really good at managing lots of things all at once, then natural born project manager, there you go. And in truth, I know recruiters have a terrible name, but if a recruiter does the job properly, they can educate the client to say, look, you need someone with these attributes rather than just these skills, and help them with the language, because that also is a big turn off for people when there's a massive big tick box. Do you have this, 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 and this? Well, a good recruiter would turn around and say, you're not going to find all of that in one person. There's 4 people you need here to do individual roles. So if you've got a recruiter to push back and educate the clients, but then also to coach the candidates. So if you do have people from different diverse backgrounds and maybe aren't familiar with the professional recruitment process where you've got to interview and presentations, and to have them sit down and go, this is what is going to happen, this is what it's going to look like, and do a little bit of coaching and role playing. The whole thing together, if we did all of those things, the world would be a different place. But I do think community, we should all take a little bit more responsibility in nurturing and supporting our network, the people around us, you know.
Very well said. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you think we need more metrics around inclusion and diversity in the cybersecurity industry?
So yes, I think start off by saying yes, definitely. We need to be very familiar with all the metrics across the working profession itself, security profession. So if you know that publicly, 13% of the population are from a diversity background, so BAME or otherwise. What the thing is, does that reflect your workplace? Do you have 13% as an example? But sometimes that can be a problematic number to have within your organization. So you can't really say, I want 13% of people from that background or any other background. So the next best thing for me, in my opinion, is having diverse panels, making sure when you're interviewing for people, or, people are hiring colleagues in the industry, you have, a male, a female, and a diverse person on the panel, whether it's neurodiversity or something else. It doesn't really matter as long as you cover one of those aspects. The second part of that is, is guaranteed interviews. You can't guarantee somebody a job, because that would be not something that is quite common across the industry, and it's not right thing to do, just giving somebody a job because they meet a criteria quota. You've got to go through the whole process of assessment and interview and skills and all that kind of assessment for you to get that role. Getting that role, I think guaranteed interviews is a good place to start, saying, if you meet the minimum requirement for that job in terms of your job application is the right, you are not, removed from the interview process. That process exists for disability colleagues or people with disability. For example, myself, I'm disabled. Within the civil service, we have this guaranteed interview scheme for disabled people. So as long as you meet the minimum criteria, you will be guaranteed an interview. Now, this is where the coaching comes in. Previous question that you asked, you coach somebody through that process. As long as they've got the right skills, the right experience from a mentoring perspective, the education perspective, and all those kind of things, they should be able to sell themselves an interview. So I think the process of attracting diverse panels, making sure you've got a process in place for people to get guaranteed interviews, will allow that metrics to change, and it will change for the positive. And some places you won't get the metrics. It doesn't matter where if you go to Buxton, 0.3% of the that borough are not BAME. So it's just one of those things where you have to understand some parts of the country you won't get there, other parts you will, but as an organization that's a different question, and that should be tackled in as a way I've described.
Do you think that like officially sort of consciously challenging our human bias is one way that we can all try as individuals to contribute to overcoming this problem?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, one of the key things, kind of hinted at, if you want diversity in an organization, how diverse are you as an individual being, right? If all your friends look like you, you're not really living that diversity message. So, how are you engaging with the broad swathe of the UK, in your own personal life? How are you understanding those cultural backgrounds and the diversity and interests of everybody? And then thinking about how we are bestowing the gifts of opportunity that we have and we have received to the people that are within our networks and our communities, and we're doing a good job to make sure that we are encouraging that best talent into the industry that we all love. And I think that's really important. If we're not challenging ourselves, then we're not challenging the industry.
That's a really good point, I think. How we choose to pay forward, whether we choose to pay forward opportunities that we have received. And your words there around, considering actually how diverse our social group is and what human bias we may actually have, really brings to mind some of the conversations that I think were very much highlighted in the summer around the need to be anti-racist. It wasn't enough. Of course, it's not enough to just not be racist. We have to think about how we can proactively challenge some of these issues. But as we're drawing to a close, I want to come back to Erhan, because we've spoken a bit about interviews. And I know from conversations I've had with Erhan how passionate you are about, as an individual, sort of making the most of an interview, no matter which way it goes. So I wonder if you have any advice for individuals out there who want to get into the industry. What do you think they can do, particularly if they're networking, if they're meeting people, if they're having interviews? How can they make the most of those potential places of opportunity?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of touch on this in a few ways. I think the first thing is go along and be your authentic self. So I think as a community, we have a lot to do to kind of work on the job descriptions and really explain that, you don't need 5 years to do certain jobs. I think this is one thing we know as a community. But one of the things that I kind of would say is that if you do go along to an interview and you are unfortunately unsuccessful, do go back and ask for feedback, because I think a lot has been touched on these stereotypes where we think we have to go along and show our techie geeky self. However, I can, show my vulnerability here. I can tell you some feedback I've had in the past, because, you only have an hour to sell yourself in most examples on one round of an interview. And you may be told that, oh, actually, I don't think you had quite the soft skills. So what I would say is, make sure you get the right blend, a mixture of technical and your soft skills, and go back and ask for the feedback. But I would like to really, I guess, as a last point, just to really summarize my point on this, touch on something that I read recently. I can't give credit because I don't know who said it, but I think it's worth highlighting. And it was, it was vitamins, and that was vitamin A for action. So go out there and take action and get that goal that you want to get. And vitamin B was for belief. So believe in yourself and surround yourself with people who believe in you. Vitamin C was for confidence. So when you're going to an interview, be confident, be your true self. You've got this. Vitamin D was for discipline. So be disciplined on your goal. I remember reading a Denzel Washington quote, and it was dreams without goals are just dreams, right? So, make sure you have that in place. And E was for enthusiasm, vitamin E for enthusiasm. So just be enthusiastic, go along, go to the interview, show your authentic self. And as I said, if you are unfortunate not to get to that next round, do go back and ask for feedback. And you never know, you could have a second opportunity.
That's fantastic advice and actually really inspiring, I think, for anyone watching to be able to think about that. So thank you so much. And a really nice summary of what you were talking about. I wonder if I could invite some of the others to make a brief summary of their points. And I'm going to go to Mabubal first. If you want people to go away with one message from the conversation today, what would it be?
I would say the first thing I would like to say is everybody on this call is actually very passionate about diversity and inclusion. That's why we're all here and we're talking about it. Something that should not be forgotten. But the thing I would like to take away from this conversation is diversity has multiple dimensions, and we need to start reflecting on ourselves, as mentioned by Dan, and on how we are contributing to that factor, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through coaching, whether it's through mentoring. What are we doing to make that change instead of saying there's a problem? We always talk about just the problem, be part of the solution. And as a community, everybody on the call is part of the solving that problem. So it's great to see everybody talking about that and their experiences in that space.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant advice. Take your vitamins, be part of the solution. You've mentioned Dan, so I'll move to Dan next. What would your one key message from this discussion be?
I guess for me, it'd be create the diversity in your personal life that you want to see in your organization or the industry you work in, whether that's cybersecurity or IT. You know, you've got to walk the walk as if you're going to do, talk the talk. So, just take that time, reflect upon your own personal life and say, actually, is this what I believe that we should be creating?
Brilliant. Great advice. And Antonia?
So you've all made some really great comments then. I think each and every one of you stolen my little advice I was going to give, and I had the fortunate of being almost last, I think, there. But in truth, if you're able to work with a really great recruiter, someone who wants to get to know you, support you, coach you, help you reach your goals, there are really good ones out there. I know there's lots of bad ones because they get a very loud rep, but there's also some really great ones who really want to support and help you in your career. So go seek them out, go speak to them, tell them what you want to do. And the really good ones will at the very least put you in touch with a great mentor or someone to follow, someone to watch, articles to read, and give you tips and coaching as well as hopefully to help you find that next job in your career. And that does sound really cliche, but they really are useful to have someone who's great and experienced in that area and can support and guide you along the way.
I think that's really true. And if you haven't got someone in your corner, then it's important to find someone who is, because there are people out there who want to help. And last but not least, Danny, how would you sum up the conversation, the one key message?
I'd like to, like people to remind, young people in particular, that going into employment, it's a partnership. It's not just going in and trying to fit that, that sort of job description, which very few people will fit the thing that gets printed or you download or whatever. So go in with the attitude that where, you might not match it, find out how they can help you match it, or find the areas that you might actually be bringing that the employer hadn't thought of already, because they are going to give to you a job and you're going to give to them the effort. It's an exchange. There's a social contract as well as your employment contract. So feel that confidence. You've got the power. If they've taken you for interview, you've already got something that they want. So make sure that they see it. Now, having said that, I must add also that we need to be careful as an industry, or any industry still needs to be careful about this traditional interview process, because I think a lot of people will slip through the gaps. I mean, I'm thinking about our wonderful neurodiverse team back at IASME. The interview panel is just so the wrong place for them. I just feel I just needed to get that in. Sorry.
Don't apologize at all. It's a really good point. And I think it feeds into the earlier conversation that you brought up, that we have to find what's right for the individual. And if we force the same rigid process on everybody, then of course it's not going to work. And for those people, we're going to lose out on the talent of those people for whom it doesn't work, and they're going to lose out on the opportunities. So I think that's a really, really valid point, and I'm grateful that you made that. Thank you all so much for watching this session, and especially thank you to each and every panelist who has brought so many good points and practical, actionable advice that I think we as professionals in the industry can take back to organizations. And if you're somebody who is starting off in the industry or seeking to get into the industry, I hope you've also had some advice that you will find helpful to move forward. Before we end, I just want to say a huge thank you to Cyber House Party for running these sessions, working so hard to bring everybody together and raise money for great causes. Thanks, everyone.